Hello everyone. So this is part 2 of the cross currency swaps, and in the first video we discussed the basics of how this cross currency swaps works. And I cleared some sign confusions that happen when we do cross currency swaps. But what actually is the objective of doing it? I mean, how does it work out numerically? So maybe this will clear concepts on the scale how the money is issued by different corporations. It's a very simple example, and I have chosen some numbers based on some bookish example, but it should help clear the concept. So let's take a initial set of numbers. You have Euribor. I'm not assuming whatever the level, I'm using LIBOR. I know it's now SOFR, but for simplicity, let's say these are the two rates at which you can issue. And if a corporation, or maybe last time I used, I think, Omega, issues this in US, then it will need to pay something like LIBOR plus 80 pips. If it issues in Europe, it will need to pay Euribor plus 40 pips, because a corporation of similar type, this is more of a risk thing that people expect this much spread for corporations which are having similar financial risk as Omega. So if they do it in US, it is 80 bips. If it's in Europe, it's 40 bips. So you might think it's easier maybe to issue in Europe. Let's assume also, I mean, this is the spreads in different countries. This Europe, this is USA, and the basis is minus 80, meaning that if I do a cross currency, then USD LIBOR versus Euribor minus 80, this is the convention. So I will have to pay this much to exchange or to get dollar funding. So this is the direction I am assuming. I know directions can be different in different books, but mostly that's the very common direction that you always do it against USD. Now, if this is minus 80 pips, then uh, I'm also assuming something a slightly different, that basis is not constant. So it is not constant. So if I do an issuance for 10 years, then my basis is, let's say, minus 80. And if I do it for maybe 1 year, it goes close to 0. I've drawn this graph in a very weird way. I mean, from minus 80, it goes to 0. But just to make it clear, I mean, this is 10 years. So at 5 years, it will be minus 40. Right? You can assume this is the axis. So at 10 years, it is minus 80. At 5 years, it is minus 40. And at 0 year, it's just 0. So basically, you can think that it is decreasing by 8 pips per year, right? Because 8 times 5, 40, which is this one. So that's a good assumption to make, because generally basis is not linear, but I mean, it won't follow this exact pattern, but you will see why I made up these numbers. It makes sense overall. Let's take the first example, that I am a European corporation and I need to issue money. If I do it in Europe, I will have to simply pay Euribor plus 40 pips. Now, other side, there's maybe a USA corporation, maybe Apple. If it does in US, then it has to pay LIBOR plus 80 bips. Now this is the actual cost. I mean, I'm assuming that I can finance at LIBOR, but I have to pay plus 80 bips somehow. Now I want to take advantage. Maybe I don't want to pay plus 80. I want to see if I can reduce this number. How can I reduce this number? What I will do is I will go to maybe in Europe, I issue the note, and let's say this is my issuance. So this is me, USA Corporation. I issue the note and I say that, okay, I will issue it for, let's say, 1 million euros. I get 1 million euros, right? But now I know that I have to pay Euribor plus 40 bips. I mean, that won't change. People will say that you have issued in Europe, but you have to pay Euribor plus 40 bips. But I don't have this. How do I generate this? I have 1 million euros. I do a CCS or cross currency swap. So just to write it, I have 1 million euros and I pay 1 million euros here and I get back 1 million USD. Since the issuance is of 10-year, assuming the issuance is for 10 years, what happens? I get paid. I have to pay USD LIBOR and I will receive what? Euribor minus 80 bips. But that's a problem. I mean, I get Euribor minus 80 bips and suppose I'm supposed to pay this much. So overall cost for me is plus 120 pips. I won't issue it here in Europe. It's a problem, right? Because I mean, in US, I could have issued this in my home country at plus 80. Here, I am paying plus 120 pips spread. So for 10-year issuance, I will do it in USA, which is home country. What if the issuance is for 5 years? Same calculation, but it will be Euribor minus 40 bips. I will get, which combined with this 40 bips makes 80 bips. And this cost is same as what I'm getting in home country. So I'm basically indifferent between issuing it here or issuing it in Europe. So it will be something like this. If I were to say for 10 years to 0 years, here I will issue in USA and here I will issue in Europe. So this is the boundary line which is deciding this. And why this boundary is there? Because the numbers chosen were such that basis was increasing, decreasing at this 8 bips per year. If this number was different, then my pivot will shift here and there, right? So basically, I can say that US corporation for less than 5 years, it will issue in foreign, this Europe. Greater than 5 year, it will issue domestic. So here is where the thing comes that, okay, now what about the investors? I mean, this is the advantage. For the investor, it is the other scenario. If you think about it, for greater than 5 year, investor will prefer to invest in foreign countries. For less than 5 year, for domestic. Why? Because if I had, let's say, 1 million USD to invest, or not 12 million USD, maybe 1000 USD, then what I will do is I will swap it to euro because I just pay Euribor minus 80 pips and I get USD LIBOR. And if I'm getting this much money, if I invest this in this bond, overall I'm generating USD LIBOR plus 80 pips. It is more than this I'm generating, right? Because in home country, I'm supposed to generate this much, but I can beat this return by just doing a simple cross currency. So it is always the opposite diagram that whenever you have something like this, then this will be the case and this will be the case. So these two forces balance the spreads. This is the play between the basis, that how the basis changes each year, and this pivot shifts here and there based on issuance preferences, investor preferences. That is supply and demand. And supply and demand comes from both sides, the corporation side and the investor side. And this pressure is inserted on the basis, which is more like for investors, they will try to increase the basis. For issuers, they will try to decrease the basis. So it will be kind of something like this. If you think about it, this will be the arrow for the USD corporation. You can think of the same scenario for Europe corporation, but ideally that's how the basis spreads work, and hope it gives some more intuition of why cross-currency swaps are important and why it must become second nature for anyone working in investment banks.